Welcome to the second webinar in the professional development series for women in ocean science. I'm really pleased to talk to you today primarily about finding fieldwork opportunities in marine science. So a bit of a background on how the webinar will look today. I'll give you a bit of my background, kind of why I'm qualified to talk to you about this. And then we'll kind of go through three major sections. So first of all, how to set your own expectations for fieldwork, then finding opportunities, how you go about that, and then kind of marrying those two together. So when you know what your expectations are and you know what kind of opportunities you want, how do you then kind of bring those together to make sure that the opportunities you find do the best for you? And we'll finish with a bit of Q&A as well. But as I said, please feel free to put questions in the chat and ask questions as we go. We'll do a Q&A at the end of those three sections as well. But otherwise, as I said, my name is Clemency White. I am a sensory ecologist primarily. I began my life really, I guess, always knowing that I wanted to do marine science. I was quite lucky in that regard. It didn't always come naturally to me. I took some time, especially around kind of my exam levels. In the UK, we do exams at 17, 18. And at that point, I wasn't sure if I necessarily wanted to go really into a research career, but I knew that my interest in marine science was something I just wanted to pursue. So I ended up going to the University of Bristol in the UK to do a bachelor's degree in zoology. I was quite interested in having a broad base of understanding in biological theory. That being said, it's absolutely not that important what your undergrad degree is in. It felt really important at the time. But on reflection, I think the biggest thing you get from doing an undergraduate really is those really key skills in critical thinking, writing, data analysis. So it doesn't really matter too much what you focus on. So I probably would have put less pressure on myself if I went back now. During my undergraduate, I really wanted to get field experience. I was drawn to marine science as a field because I really liked the idea of being able to be in those environments and seeing them firsthand, as I think a lot of people do. So I did two kind of bits of, I paid to go out and volunteer. And I know that there's a big conversation to be had around the kind of ethics and if we should continue to do that. But today, or at least at that stage in my career, that was what was available to me. I took a year out of studying to work and save money to do so. I spent about 2 weeks volunteering, helping with a PhD student in Belize on a project looking at the site fidelity of reef sharks to certain coral reefs. And then I did 4 weeks in Cuba on a project looking at mapping pristine coral reefs. So at this point, I just wanted to be in the field. I didn't really care necessarily what I was working on. And then I graduated and realized, oh, okay, well, I love all these things and I have all these skills, but I actually don't know where I want to apply them. So I kind of felt like even though I had some field experience, I didn't know where to put it. So then I kind of went and took a year out again before I did my master's degree so that I could get some more specific experience. And at that point, I'd really been drawn to a lot of the studies that had been done on juvenile shark populations, where you have a nice captive or almost natural field experiment. So I went and volunteered on a project for 2 months. I gained some really good field skills. I also gained some really good relationships, and that ended up leading me to a position where I could go and do my master's research in that system. So I did a master's degree in marine environmental management at the University of York, and my thesis focused on the movement of sharks around human developments. And I'd say that spending that kind of extended amount of time in the field for me was so inspiring, and it really gave me a lot of ideas. So I kind of had this theoretical background. I loved sensory biology. I didn't necessarily know how you applied sensory biology in the field, but I kind of married those two together when I spent this time out there. And I left my master's degree feeling like I had loads of questions I wanted to ask. I had a really good idea of the kind of things I was interested in. And so for me, it was a very natural progression to try and pursue a PhD. So I went on to the University of Exeter. I did my PhD in the acoustic ecology of sharks. Here, I had to learn, I knew about sensory ecology in theory. Bioacoustics in practice means a lot of electricity and a lot of water. So that was a big learning curve for me. But I ended up doing field work out in Miami, looking at the effects of anthropogenic noise on shark populations. I also assisted in some field work in some freshwater systems in Sweden, looking at particle motion in boat noise studies. And since then, I've also gone on to do some field work right here in the UK as well. So working on kind of cat shark populations and how we look at the differences in those between pristine seagrass areas and non-pristine seagrass areas. So I've kind of had a really diverse amount of fieldwork experience. It's become a lot more focused as I've gone on in my career. And I think that all career progressions look really different. You don't have to be, a researcher to have a career in marine science either. So there are loads of different pathways you should take. So don't look at my background as kind of a blueprint for like how you can become a scientist. More so just a bit of an example of the types and ways that you can get fieldwork experience. One of the things I did when I got to the end of my PhD was I really looked back on my experience and I reflected just on the variety and how different some of these experiences had been. And that led me into this kind of new area of my work, which has been looking at fieldwork best practice. I do this both through research and consultancy. So it started as a study. We did a big online survey of marine scientists to see what we knew about their experience and how their experiences in the field made them the scientists they are today. And what we were trying to do was look at the hallmarks and the features of fieldwork that we could really identify as the things that made people feel like they were able to be more ambitious and be more confident and achieve more of their goals. So this is currently in review at the IC's Journal of Marine Science. So hopefully you'll get the results of that in a paper very soon. But we've also been supported by Save Our Seas for the past 2 years to build this into a wider project. So we also run workshops with universities and with conferences and organizations, societies as well, so that we can try and embed better practice for fieldwork into research organizations. And this all really boils down to this idea that fieldwork should really be safe and supportive. We want equitable cultures because that's really where we produce good scientists, and good scientists make good science. So this is really a part of my ethos as well. So kind of what we're going to go through today, this kind of forms the foundation of. So what kind of types of fieldwork opportunity exist out there? They're hugely varied. I tend to end up veering towards my experience when I talk about these things. So I tend to use words like field station, and I tend to kind of talk in maybe a bit more of an international context. But anything I'm talking about today does apply across a lot of different types. So that can include things such as local seasonal work. You might live somewhere where you have access to a coastline and there's potentially a local organization or a local charity that will maybe want surveyors for a week in the spring, or they might want them for a weekend every few weeks. So you can do local seasonal work, which allows you to kind of live at home and go out on these kind of smaller shifts. You can have these longer term residential on-site internships where you tend to go and maybe live at a field station, for example, live with a small group of people, either in a local community or even sometimes completely isolated, and just apply fieldwork skills kind of consistently for maybe anywhere from a month to about 6 months. You can also volunteer with universities. So sometimes lab groups need help, and you can get some experience going out and assisting on programs or with PhD students or master's students at the university you're at, or also as a prospective student. Also, there are plenty of jobs that give you fieldwork experience. So this could be, for example, seeding seagrass projects. We have some of those in the UK. We also have like oyster bed restoration projects in the UK that sometimes hire seasonal or part-time workers. So that can sometimes get you out in the field. Or also courses. So there are places like the Field Studies Council, for example, that will offer courses, paid courses, where you go and learn a specific field skill over a period of time. So these are various ways that you can start to build those skill sets. So first of all, once you kind of have had a thought about all of those things included, where do you start? If you know you are interested in doing field work and you know that's something you want to do, where do you actually begin? And the thing I always come back to, and maybe this is the scientist in me, but the most important thing is always why. So why do you want to get into field work? What is the thing that makes that interesting to you or makes that exciting to you? What do you actually really want to get out of it? It's really important that we kind of have a bit of a critical approach to fieldwork rather than seeing an advertisement and just being like, I'm going to go and do that, because sometimes it means that you're taking opportunities that might not actually directly be helping you in the best way. So it's nice to take the time, and I actually encourage you to do this as we go along. If you have like a pen and paper or the notes app on your phone, is to just maybe jot down some ideas of the kind of things that you could set your expectations of now. So I do this by kind of envisioning what my future marine scientist persona looks like. So if I think about myself now, and I envision who I want to be or where I want to be in the next 5 to 10 years, for example, ask yourself some questions like, what do you want to achieve in that period? Do you want to get a degree? Do you want to have any specific qualifications? Are there just things you want to experience? What does achievement look like for you over those 5 to 10 years? And then what kind of marine scientist do you want to be? Because again, you don't need to be a researcher. You might want to be an excellent outreach facilitator. You might want to be a science communicator. You might want to be excellent at underwater videography. You might want to instruct or teach. Have an idea of what being a marine scientist really looks like to you. And in the same way, is there a specific career type or opportunity that you really want to pursue? And this could be that there is one specific internship that maybe you're not qualified for yet, but you really want to do at some point. This can be kind of over a huge scale of time. And I kind of expect that it's a good idea for you to build in that time scale. What kind of time scale are you looking at? What kind of things do you want to achieve in that? I should say from the beginning that this will change. It's important to be dynamic and flexible. I had no idea what I was doing in the beginning, but just have a real period of self-reflection to think why fieldwork in the first place. The second part of this is then thinking, okay, well, if I know who that person is 5 to 10 years down the line, what experience do I need to bridge that gap? So if I look at myself now, my current marine science persona, who am I? And what experience am I going to need to bridge that gap? So this can be asking yourself questions such as, are there any specific techniques or experiences that you might need? This could be, for example, gaining camera skills. It could be getting a scuba certification. It could be getting a boating license. It could be that there are specific types of first aid that then might be needed to work in certain environments that you're interested in. Are there specific things that you might need to be comfortable with or experiences that you need in order to bridge that gap? Again, I like to say there might not be anything that you can put your finger on now. Sometimes what I'd like to do is look at people who are in positions or look at organizations that are doing things that I really want to be involved in, look at who's doing that and see what experiences they have, see what kind of things that they've done in the past. Don't be afraid to reach out to people as well. That's normally a good way of getting a bit of an idea of what those things might look like. How can you diversify what you already have? This was definitely a trap I fell into a lot. And it's no bad thing to get to strengthen skills that you have. But often, especially with field work, there can be really exciting opportunities that come up and you think, oh, I really want to do that. And they actually might kind of overlap quite significantly with skills you already have. And that is great for strengthening them, but it means that you're kind of building on a very narrow set of skills where actually having quite a diverse set of experiences and skills is really quite can help you down the line when you don't necessarily know what you might end up in. And also think about the soft skills. So alongside those things like scuba certifications or boating certifications, for example, one of the things that's key for field work and often isn't given enough space is just your ability to talk to other people, communicate, do teamwork, collaborate with others. All of those things will be so important when you're spending a lot of time in the field with people. And I really value those skills in people who I work with. So make sure that you're also thinking about your soft skills as alongside the things that are maybe more specific qualifications. And also think about where am I in my current career stage? You know, what's reasonable for me? You don't have to be trying to aim like right for the very top of it. Think about where you are. Take some time to look behind you as well. What have you already gained? What have you already done? And those things don't even necessarily have to be things you've gained from field experience. They can also be things that you've just gained from other bits of your academic or employment history. And just have a bit of self-reflection. Where am I now and where do I want to be? And then once you kind of have that idea of where I am now, the things I need to bridge this gap to where I want to be in terms of my career, then you can start thinking about those resources. And this starts to get a little bit more specific. So those will be things like, how much time do I have? And be really honest with yourself, because again, I at times in my life would have just given up everything to go and do 6 weeks of field work. And it's okay if you have the capacity to do that, but definitely think about what that means for you and if you do have the capacity at that time. And it might be that you want to do 6 weeks in the summer. It might be that you'd prefer to get weekends of experience dotted throughout the year, but just have a bit of an idea of what that kind of time dedication looks like to you. Are you willing to pay and what can you afford? Obviously, like I said, this is quite a changing and quite challenging topic in marine science. There's a lot I could say about this. I think if it was up to me, the landscape would look very different in terms of what people are expected to do. But in the realities of what exists right now, it's very reasonable for people to feel like they definitely want to go and pay for these experiences. So it's absolutely fine if that's what you want to do. And I definitely would pursue them. But think about it. Don't kind of put yourself in a really hard situation. What are you willing to pay? What can you afford to pay? And that can be inclusive of things like your travel, any vaccinations you might need, any visa requirements you might need, any spending money you have. So just, again, really reflect on that before you start applying to things that you might get really far down the path with before you realize that it might be a barrier to you. And speaking about that, a lot of places do offer extra support. And it's worth looking at those kinds of things as well. So there are some charities, for example, some societies and some field stations themselves that do offer things like bursaries or places for people who are trying to come and get fieldwork experience. So investigate those, see if you're eligible for some, and just keep a tab so that you know where to go. You might even find in your own community. I found, for example, that there are like local charities that just support people from my area to go out and gain employment experience. And so it wasn't even specific to marine science, but those opportunities do sometimes exist. So have a look around for those. And then think about where you want to travel, when you want to travel and how you want to travel. I think one of the best pieces of advice I got was from one of my supervisors when I was an undergraduate, who he went and did his PhD out in South Africa. He was an ornithologist. He was working on birds. And I remember thinking, oh, that's so cool. You know, I'd love to go and do a PhD working somewhere really interesting. You know, what made you end up finding that study system? And he said, I just always wanted to go to South Africa. And that's a good enough reason. If you want to go and travel the world, if there are things you want to see, if there are, you know, marine species that you want to be in the water with, that's a good enough reason to go and get good field experience. And it's a good way to tailor things around that. Make sure that you're tying in kind of your career goals with things that also are just very fulfilling for you. And then kind of going back into yourself as well, it's really important to reflect what your needs are for a working environment. This should be something that a field station does support you with. And we'll talk about this a bit later on in terms of joining up your expectations. But it's really important to take some time to reflect on what you need, because field stations can be incredibly demanding and quite unique places of work. So think about your own accessibility. Are there specific things that you require in order to have a safe working experience? And if so, make sure that you really are aware of those things when you're applying. What about your own well-being? Sometimes we can find that we're living in field stations for, you know, months at a time with a really small group of people. What do you need to feel comfortable in those kinds of situations? Do you need to make sure that you have private space? Do you need to make sure you have space that you can go out and, you know, read your book somewhere quiet? If so, those are all things that we can tie into, you know, asking the right questions at interview and finding the right field stations for you. But really good to be aware of them before you start applying. And then also your own flexibility. So there are some things, for example, that you kind of non-negotiables for you. Think about, okay, I absolutely need that from a field site. I'm not willing to be flexible on that. But then think about, you know, maybe, you know, ideally for my well-being, I like to get 8 hours of sleep a night, but I'd also be pretty happy to do some night field work if it was cool. I'm very happy to be flexible on my sleep schedule if, you know, it only happens once a week or only happens 2 times a week. Think about the kind of things that you're willing to be flexible on and the kind of things that are really your non-negotiables. And to summarize that, it's worth kind of stating again, fieldwork is really intense. It's quite demanding. It's really unpredictable. We don't always know exactly what's going to happen, how it's going to happen, what's going on. It really should challenge you. We want to make sure that we're pushing ourselves because that's how we gain those new skills, but it should never be at the cost of your own well-being. So having that really good idea of, you know, what are my limits for my well-being, when do I know that this is not something that's right for me, is just as important as knowing when something is right for you. So setting those boundaries early on is a really good way of just making sure that we know what we want and what our expectations are before we start applying for fieldwork experiences. So I'm going to leave that as kind of our first section in terms of setting expectations. I will stop sharing my screen actually and come back to the call and maybe answer a couple of questions if there are any. If there aren't, then we can move on, but let me come back to the call. I'll have a look in the chat, but also if you want to put your hand up as well, you're welcome to answer. Otherwise, I'll start with your question, Miranda, about how I found the opportunity. So we're going to go into that in the next section. That will be more about like kind of finding opportunities. At the time, I'll give some specific examples here because I don't go into that too much. I had a university that had a lot of like people come and talk, I used to basically go to every talk that was interesting to me. And that was a way that I found quite a few opportunities just from like talking to people at those. Often they would be doing field work and I would just go and talk to them. And sometimes it would point me in the direction of an organization that kind of offered internships, for example, or they'd point me in the direction of a person who was maybe needing some help. We also used to have like charities and organizations come and give talks. So I did a lot of that. If you're near a university or part of a university, then I definitely recommend that. A lot of things, I mean, I'm actually not that old, I don't think. But I feel like nothing was online then. So I did a lot of it in person, which meant that it kind of forced me to talk to people. But now things are online, it makes it much more accessible. So definitely go online and like join calls. I mean, calls like this, but there are always people who want to talk. People love talking about their research. So just talk to them. You get so much opportunity just from talking to people. That's what I'd say. So yeah, most of them are that way, and then a couple of them were from kind of like online advertisements as well. And we'll go into that a bit more. But yeah, definitely things I found through social media, for example, places I followed. Cool. Yes, Sifa. I've just seen your question about my experience studying in Bristol. Yeah, I can talk to you about that. I can send you a message separately, maybe afterwards if you like. I did my undergrad at Bristol and I also am still like affiliated there. So I still work there. So yeah, I'm definitely happy to talk about that, but I can send you a message afterwards, maybe if you want to talk about that more specifically, because yeah, if you're considering doing a master's, I'm sure I could talk for a long time. And I think there's enough of me talking in this webinar already. Excellent, cool. We'll go back to the presentation, but keep sending questions if you do have any. Let me share. Excellent. So the next thing is finding opportunities. So where do you start? My best advice really on this is to cast your net really, really wide and then filter it based on those expectations that we just kind of set for ourselves. There are three of the kind of three ways that I would say are the best and the most fruitful ways of finding opportunities. The first is social media. It's absolutely by far and away the easiest way to find things. Most lab groups, most individual researchers, most kind of societies, organizations, field stations, they all have Instagram pages, they all have Facebook pages. I like to kind of, like, I guess I do it slightly less now, but I would probably try and, even if you create a separate account or something, like find an account that kind of like follows all the people who you're like, okay, these are the people who do the most interesting research, or these are the people who do the careers that are most similar to what I want to do. Kind of like make that vision board, for example, of that kind of future marine science persona for yourself through your social media. And what you'll do is you'll just normally come up with like the same lab groups, the same places, the same whatever. You start to find these kind of common threads that, a lot of people go to the same places, a lot of people have the same experiences. And from that, you can start to pull out kind of the places where those opportunities lie. Often they'll always advertise on there too. So I see a lot of things being advertised through Instagram, LinkedIn. Facebook groups are actually still really good for it as well, if you use Facebook. I tend to just like follow a lot of people, places that are involved with that work, talk to them, and that's a really good way to find opportunities. Second is things like job boards. So Texas A&M have a really good environment job board. They tend to put a lot of opportunities up there. Wise Oceans, Conservation Careers, those are two other job boards that will they'll put up things including volunteer internships, specific paid jobs, and also like courses as well. So I still go through those now sometimes just to see if anything cool comes up. So definitely still have a look at those. And if anyone actually has any other job boards or actually social media channels, if you want to send them in the chat, that's a really good way for you also to all share with each other places that you find opportunities really useful. And then also, like I said, ask around. That's the thing I have found to be the most useful. Just if you're at a university already, like I said, talk to people, talk to your professors, talk to your PhD students, talk to like master students, just make a good like network of that. You can also do that again online. You can still message people, we can still email people, and just ask if people need help. Sometimes you'll find that fieldwork opportunities might not be the first thing that comes through the door, but you might find that down the line there are opportunities. So a good example, I spent my whole undergraduate volunteering for a charity. I used to just run their social media. So they were never kind of like a fieldwork organization, but from that, I got so much experience and I met so many people that fieldwork opportunities did come from the places I ended up in. So taking opportunities, even when they don't seem like the right foot in the door, they still might lead to good places. Another good example is I did a lot of like teaching, or when I was a PhD student, and I used to like assist on the teaching for other professors. And one day I was teaching in a lab, and a student had a problem, and I kind of helped her through this problem. And then before I left, she kind of said, "Oh, like while you're here, what do you do?" And I told her what I did, and she was really interested in it. And we had a really good chat. She was so nice, and she was like, "I'd love to just hear a bit more about kind of your career and like how I could get started in a career in field science." So we had coffee a couple of weeks later. I was leaving the university, so I never ended up. I couldn't offer her anything, but I did put her in touch with my supervisor, and she's now doing her master's degree with him, going out and doing really cool field work in Cornwall. So kind of those ins are, like I said, people want to talk about their science. Everyone's a nerd. Everyone really wants like someone to be interested in what they're doing. So make the most of that. Cool. I'm going to talk a little bit about the art of the cold email as well, because I know that I've had to do this a lot. And often when you potentially want an opportunity, you'll find that Field Station, for example, might advertise an opportunity. It doesn't quite work for you at the moment. You can't apply then. Sometimes it's still worth getting in contact with people to say, I see you're advertising this position, but it's not suitable for me right now. Do you think that there might be some more down the line, or are there any other opportunities, for example, in outreach or communication that I could maybe get involved with? Those are good ways to make connections, even if it comes with rejection. It still puts your name on their mind, and it still kind of puts your foot in the door. So a couple of things about if you're going to email someone cold, just be really clear in what you're asking for. Make it really, give them a question to answer, I think is normally kind of my advice. Make sure you tailor your email to the person or the institution. Try not to just like pepper out emails to every field station and kind of say, do you have an opportunity? Try and ask them specifically why you're interested in them. Keep something nice and short and snappy. A lot of people who do cool things get a lot of emails, and a lot of them are really unresponsive. I dealt with a lot of people who just didn't reply to me ever or for a really long time. Shorter, snappier emails will always get a better response. It's also, on that same vein, okay to follow up. If you don't get a response immediately, wait a couple of weeks and then maybe send a follow-up email just asking, hey, just wondered if you'd had an opportunity to take a look at my question. If you don't get a response ever, don't take it personally. People are probably really busy. Sometimes you just have to put your foot in a lot of doors until one swings open. So don't let it put you off. And it sounds like kind of negative advice, but I think it's positive advice. Expect rejection. We can celebrate rejection, because every time you get rejected from something, it's because you put yourself out there and you tried to do something for yourself. So celebrate the fact that you tried, take it on the chin, and remember that it doesn't close the door. I've had, for example, actually one of the first the big fieldwork opportunity I got when I went and did a big volunteer internship, I applied to do a project at the field station and I got rejected. And I was like one of the last candidates that got interviewed, and I left being like, oh my god, they think I'm so stupid, I'm done. And then they kind of 2 weeks down the line emailed me saying, sorry it didn't work out, but we have this other opportunity, like would you like to do that? And so it actually worked out in my favor in the end. So just remember that putting yourself out there, even if it doesn't work out the first time, doesn't mean it's not going to end up giving you something back. And then a couple of things actually that are just really useful to have on hand. Make sure you have your CV that's just kind of ready to go. You'll probably want to tailor it to specific places. Just have your education, your employment, field skills, soft skills as well, any specific certifications, communications. If you have a couple of people who are happy for you to list them as a reference on your CV, have them on there too. And just make sure you have that ready to go. So if you see an opportunity that comes up that really works for you, you don't have to like rapidly try and type something out. You're like, there, it's perfect. I included an example of my CV because my PhD supervisor recommended I do this, and it's actually been really helpful. Always have a little bio just about kind of what your background is and what you want to do, what you're interested in. And now when I hire people, it's so much more, it gives you a bit of personality, and it lets me know, okay, not only do I know that you're qualified to do this job, but I actually know why you're wanting to do it, what you're wanting to get from it. The second thing I always have ready, and I really recommend, it's like the best piece of advice I'd ever had, is my spreadsheet of success. Basically, every time you do anything that gives you a new skill, is an example of like using a skill you already have. Add it to a spreadsheet. Just have a little spreadsheet going. It can be ugly as anything. It doesn't have to be nice. The date you did it, what it was, a bit of a description of what it was, and then like the key skills that you got from it. This is like gold dust when you're then embellishing your CV to send it to a specific organization, or if you ever have an interview and you need to exemplify your skills, you always have somewhere to go back and be like, okay, I do have experience of writing. It was when I did that conference bursary, for example. you would be so surprised at how many things you forget you've done, and how hard it is to recall bits of information. And also you can go back to it sometimes and just be like, look at all the success I've had. And it gives you a little bit of a win for the day. So I really recommend keeping a spreadsheet like this, just so that you always have the ability to apply for things quickly, and quite targeted way. Okay, so that kind of finishes that section. I will come back to you and see if there are any questions.
We have a question from Samantha.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let me see. Samantha, do you ever see field workers who do not have a science degree, have creative career, volunteer at zoos, like to contribute as a videographer? Yeah, absolutely. There are definitely opportunities for people like you. Every field station I've worked at tends to have someone who does media. It's like actually increasingly important as well. I think it's also, I mean, creative storytelling, I think, has become a really important way for field stations to also get their message out there. There are grant opportunities for people who have backgrounds in like creative fields as well. So sometimes you can actually find you get supported to do those things. But also sometimes you could probably be quite successful also trying to get in touch with field stations and researchers, for example, and being like, can I tell your story? That's the kind of thing that people, again, often as scientists, we don't have access to. So it's actually a really important skill that none of us have. So you are actually giving a big opportunity to researchers by having those skills. I had some people who did my master's degree whose backgrounds were in like film, videography, a couple of people who did almost political science as well, who were trying to go kind of from a storytelling angle. So yeah, don't let it put you off. I think your background is like a lot of fieldwork experiences often tend to be looking for people who want to get a foot in the door, get like a step on the ladder that helps them go on to be really successful in the field, or like to have the success they want in the field. So often it's less about what background you have and much more about what you want to do with it. So for me, I'd say that when I'm hiring people, someone with an excellent background, I think it does tell a lot, but I'm much more interested in knowing what do you want to get out of this? Like, what can I give you to make sure that like you go on and flourish in the way that you want to? I'm looking for that match. So yeah, don't let it put you off. I think you can absolutely get a huge amount out of field work, and you're definitely very important in the field with a creative degree. Cool. So I'm going to have a little look. So I probably won't be able to answer all of these, but I will come back to some of them as well. But if someone is no longer in the graduate school, what's the best way to find seminars and talks about research? Yeah, that is a good point. I can't say I have like one good way of finding it. I don't have like a specific recommendation for like an email list or anything like that. Tends to be things like sometimes like grant organizations. I'd also say like blogs are quite big at the moment. If you can go to like Save Our Seas, for example, they're really good at putting out kind of their researchers like blog posts. They do regular blog posts. They also do host webinars and seminars sometimes, so they're a really good place to get access to some things like that. Otherwise, sometimes, again, like charities or field stations themselves do webinars. I'm trying to think. I used to go to them for like Earthwatch, but I don't know if they do them anymore. I'll have a look around and see. But again, try through social media or even just like Googling like research webinars. I also find actually through universities, for example, I'm in Cambridge at the moment, but a lot of the webinars or like research talks that are done here are often also put online. So if you're not at a university, you still might find that some universities like host webinar series. So that might be helpful for you. So regarding CVs, tailoring your CV for vacancies. Yeah, so I'd say that in terms of like tailoring it, in terms of like adding things, it's less about adding things and it's more about making yourself stand out for the skills that they need. So when I apply for something, for example, what I tend to do is if it kind of depends on what the application is asking, but if they're asking for people with, an interest in XYZ, I just make sure that I kind of put my CV up, I get the XYZ bullet points, and I take all of those bits of experience right to the top. You like make those things stand out. So it's less about kind of adding any extra things, but it's making sure that you look like the perfect candidate. So what you want to do is just really make your experience work for you. In terms of cold emailing, so how concise, snappy might encourage more engagement or response from researchers? I usually try to attach my CV in a cover letter to a shorter, less overwhelming email body. Yeah, that's a really good piece of advice. I always attach my CV. It's a really good way just to be like, this is what I need, but also like this kind of backs me up. So if you want any more information on who I am, it gives a bit of background. So yeah, that's a really good idea. And if you're already doing it, I think you're hopefully already in the right place for that. Cool. So same question as Samantha's, but about data analysis and data management, if there's a way to help out. So about your background. Oh, data. Okay, I'll get into this as well. But my whole, I have a little bit of a section in the next, and I don't want to talk for too long now. But data management, data analysis is probably like the most valuable thing you can have in the field. I used to teach kind of like good data practice or good data like management in the field, and essentially everything we do in the field is only as useful as the data that we collect. So yeah, you're definitely useful, and there are definitely things that you'll be able to do. I think again, it's about highlighting those things as like a really unique aspect that you have, make it your selling point rather than making it feel like something that maybe isn't your strong point, if that makes sense. Because actually, it sets you apart. So hopefully that's helpful. Cool. I'll go back to the presentation. We'll go to the last section, and then hopefully we can have a bit of time for some questions after that too. But keep bringing them in. Let me see, share my screen. Okay, so yeah, this last section is going to be about making those opportunities work for you. So let's say that you kind of have a bit of an idea about what your expectations are. You have an idea of what opportunities are out there. Now, how do you make sure that you choose the right ones? The biggest piece of advice I have is be patient, be fussy. So things don't always come around on like clockwork. Sometimes you'll find that just it seems like there's just like nothing coming up for you at the moment. You don't notice any opportunities are there. It gets really frustrating. And then you might find that 10 opportunities come up at the same time. I always recommend that it's worth understanding that the landscape is so dynamic in terms of funding, in terms of, you know, when people are required for seasonal work. Just be really patient. If you're looking in the right places, the right things will come up. And if you're asking the right people, something will come up. But don't just take an opportunity because it's the first one that's come up or the only one that's come up. Make sure you're always remembering what those things are that you need. And be honest about your expectations. It's okay if an opportunity doesn't work out for you because your expectations don't quite align, or the requirements that you have personally don't quite align with the field station. I think it's really important that we champion ourselves. And so it's hard to do, but I do really recommend that you're honest with yourself about those things. Also be honest about your experience. This is also something that I've seen sometimes, and it becomes a real challenge, is if you really want an experience and you think, oh, they ask for this specific thing, I don't have that, but I'm going to say it anyway because it means I get to go and do this cool thing. That causes a huge amount of tension when you get in the field. It normally can cause a lot of friction. Just make sure that you're like, okay, that's a cool experience, I really want to do that, I'll bank it for now, and I'll come back to it in a year when I have the qualifications to do so. But also remember, they need you. I think this is also something we forget sometimes. I think because the landscape, again, it's quite competitive, it's hard to find. You are so important to people who do field work. If they're offering an internship, a volunteership, if they're offering support, if they're offering positions, it's because they need help. So you are really valuable, and don't forget your own self-worth in this application cycle that can sometimes be quite demoralizing. Cool. So setting expectations is really the key. So anytime you're getting opportunities, that's really exciting, but you really need to come back to that why. Why am I doing it? What do I need from this? Like, what do I expect from myself, and what do I expect from them? So these are just kind of a couple of questions that I think it's important for you to ask about yourself, and also to ask for field station. So again, keep these things in mind if you want to like take a photo of this section, or again, kind of jot things down as you go. These are always important things. Probably once you get to the stage that you're, for example, like writing an application or you're interviewing. So those would be things like, when you're looking at yourself, what skills do you bring? And they can come from, you know, fieldwork experience, but like I said, they can come from creative backgrounds, they can come from data analysis backgrounds, they can come from sports backgrounds. It can be anything, but what skills do you bring? And remember that, especially when we're doing fieldwork potentially in like closed settings, just again, being able to fix boats, being able to, you know, write really neatly, like those are all genuinely very useful skills. So don't worry that not having specific fieldwork skills is not part of this as a complex. Again, what are your goals? What do you really want to get out of this? And really make sure that you put that across, not just what you want to get from this fieldwork opportunity, but also how it's going to help you more widely in your career goals. What's your interest in the project? This is actually a really important point, and I'd say it's probably the thing that, for me at least, when I've been hiring people to come and help with my fieldwork, has been quite divisive. So a lot of the times when you work in systems that with particular animals or in particular places that people really want to visit, a lot of the time people will be like, I really want to work with you because I love sharks. And I also love sharks. I love working with sharks. But for me, I was always like, that's excellent, but we actually spend a lot of the time putting acoustic recorders in the water, and we spend a lot of time dragging electrical wires up and down the beach, and we do a lot of data input. And sometimes people's very specific desire to be in the field was less important to me than someone's desire to get something out of the project itself. So again, this is for like more of a research angle, but I was always really interested in students who had just a real like kind of interest in the why. Again, what's the research? What's the question? What does this mean for science? And that's always what I really picked up on, is something that was like a good indicator of someone who was really interested. So I'd really say, again, think about your why. And if you're applying for research positions, think about why that research is interesting to you rather than just the very specific thing that you'll be doing, if that makes sense. Think about the research as a whole. Again, go back to those expectations and make it really clear, like, what are your expectations? What do you expect to get out of this? And what do you want to leave having achieved? And also bring your enthusiasm, like bring your personality. I think that sometimes we get really bogged down in science, feeling like quite a dry, I don't know, quite like impersonal. We have to be like very good at very specific things. And that's true, but it also never, ever negates or comes close to being more important than you just be loving what you do. If you really want to do it and you bring personality and you bring that enthusiasm, that's something that is so important and takes you so far. I've sat on boats for 12 hours with many, many people, and I have loved spending time, like the people who I've had the best time in the field with, the people who just were so happy to be there. And yeah, just don't worry about expressing that. Don't worry about being the perfect candidate on paper. Bring your personality. When you're talking about what you expect from a field station, what questions you want to ask of kind of like an opportunity, ask what projects are ongoing. I think that's important, not even if you're applying to a specific project. I would, for example, want to know what breadth of research is being done. I want to know that even if I'm working on project A, who am I going to get the chance to who might be working on projects B, C, and D? I want to know all the people who I might get to talk to, all the other pieces of experience that I might be able to jump in on. How will your time look? Again, this is important when you're particularly drawn to an advert that shows people swimming with turtles, for example, or something that looks amazing. You might only spend an hour a week swimming with turtles. You might spend the rest of your time sorting samples. So you want to ask these questions. How will my time be split? What does my typical day look like? What things can I kind of guarantee that I'll get to do? Maybe what are the things that I might be lucky to do if the opportunity works out? And again, with skills themselves, what am I going to be able to do in terms of like hands-on practical work? What am I going to be able to observe, and what is maybe unlikely for me to experience? Ask questions about things like visas, insurance, vaccinations. They are so important, and they can cause a huge amount of hassle. So make sure that you know that and that you've been specifically told by wherever you're going, especially if it's going to be abroad. Ask about the support. What personal support can I expect? Are there any procedures for if things go wrong? Are there any procedures that I should be aware of? And if you can get the expectations from like their side of things on paper, that's really important. If you can kind of get like a written job advert, for example, or a written bit of information about like what's expected of you before you go, those things are really, really useful for yourself to have to refer back to at certain points as well. So finally, again, we'll go into some more positive things, but I think this is really, really important. And it's something that, because fieldwork is so fun and such an exciting part of the job, we sometimes downplay or kind of push under the rug. But it's really important to be prepared for things that could go wrong before they do. And often that means thinking about these things before we even get out into the field. So things like culture and conduct, they can vary hugely between field sites. There's no one size fits all. It's really important that as people, as part of this community, that we're all respectful and we're all accountable for whatever happens, even if things go wrong. So it's important to have a good sense of how I want to conduct myself and how I want to behave. Even if other people aren't upholding that, try and do your best to be like a good, positive example. And things you can practically do are ask about behavioral expectations. does this field site have a code of conduct? Does this field site have a code of ethics? If it does, can I have a copy? And also, if they do, who do they apply to? I've also been at field stations, for example, where code of conduct applies to any volunteers. It doesn't apply to the staff. So knowing that in advance can really help you if you do have issues down the line. Think about safety. What are the medical facilities like nearby? If something happened when we were out on the water, for example, what does that look like? Do I need specific insurance for that? Especially if you're doing things like diving. What are the emergency procedures? This can also be true if you're working in a location where natural hazards might be a problem. And also things like reporting procedures. If I have a specific issue, who do I report it to? How do I report it? And what does the process look like after reporting that? These are, again, things that you don't necessarily want to think about or think about that much before you go somewhere. The worst thing that can happen is you need to do something like this, and you're then faced with trying to ask these questions while also navigating a challenging situation. So the earlier you can be aware of those types of things, the better. And really think about your support networks. You'll often work with people who, again, will become friends for life, but fieldwork is a real bubble. So make sure that you also have a support network outside of your fieldwork, friends and family, ideally people who don't even work in marine science, who can just kind of be a sense check for you, and people who you can turn to and ask for advice for if you need it. If you're, for example, not affiliated with a university, if you're going out and doing field work completely on your own, it's also worth having sometimes like a professional contact or someone in the field, maybe anyone who's been like a mentor for you, or even a peer, someone who you have been like studying with before, who can also give you some more specific advice if you have any issues. But on the more positive side, I also just want to remind you that some of the really, really fun things about fieldwork are that you get to spend loads of time with really cool people who are interested in the same things as you, and you just get to hang out all the time. And one thing I didn't appreciate when I first started doing fieldwork was that those people I used to hang out with and just do stupid, spend all this time, writing quizzes for like our boats when we were out in the field. They're now my colleagues. They're now my collaborators. I write grants and papers with those people now. This is networking, and networking is fun when you do that. So it's a really good way to get a good peer community. Take every opportunity you get with both hands. And I mean that across the board. So if you get, and I mean this more kind of like once you're out in the field, like be selective about the opportunities you take, but when you're in that position, when you finally get to go, just do everything you can. I had this kind of thing that I used to tell myself, that I would say, just say yes, especially when you want to say no. When it's been a really long day and you're really tired and someone asks if you want to go and write the data labels for the, samples, say yes, because you'll learn something and you'll talk to someone. So just take every opportunity you get. Be proactive, and this kind of applies across the board. When you're looking for opportunities, don't wait for the opportunities to come to you. It is hard and it can be long, but you only need a couple of things to go right. So ask questions, and challenge yourself. If you don't think that you can do something, but someone offers you an opportunity, be like, you know what? If they have the faith in me, I'm going to give it a go. And keep a diary. I really recommend that. Keep a diary, again, firstly, so that you can keep track of how much progress you've made, but also you just forget so many things. And I really wish I'd captured some more of the fieldwork experience I had if I had been more diligent in this. So remember who you worked with, remember what you did, remember all the good parts and the bad parts. It will really strengthen your ability to move forward and find new opportunities as well. So yeah, there's just a bit of a final bit, but like kind of just a reflection on that. Across my career, I've worked with people who were my colleagues and are now my friends, people I worked with 15 years ago in the field who, like I said, I still go and see. I travel across the world to go and hang out with them for the weekend. These are really good opportunities to meet people and build community. This is a community as well. We're really lucky with this network to be able to access people in this way as well. So just really make them work for you. Cool. I'm actually going to skip this slide and just go to my final slide, and then we'll come back for questions, because I just wanted to provide, I guess, a few reflections. Now, this is a picture of me on my very first fieldwork experience when I was 18. So a number of years ago, and the first shark I ever tagged. Still remember its tag number, it's 0734. And if I went back to this time in my life, the kind of biggest things I think I would tell myself or reflect on would be ask so many questions. And I know I've said this, but I can't stress it enough. I was so shy, and I really didn't ask people. I thought I was going to seem stupid, or people weren't going to take me seriously, or I just didn't know how to phrase it. And now I wish I had just said them. So ask questions. And like I said, say yes to everything, even when it's not fun. You'll never know what you could get from being the person who scrubs the boat. it shows just a real aptitude to be involved in everything, but it also is a really good opportunity, like I said, to gain new skills and talk to people. Cabin fever is really real. You spend a lot of time in the field. It can really feel like the whole world exists just within that little field station. It doesn't. Make sure you have good peer networks outside. And along those same lines, know your worth. Set your expectations, know what your accessibility needs are, know what your well-being needs are, and be strict with yourself. If things start to push on those boundaries, push back. That's how we make this field a more inclusive and better space for everyone. And again, to help everything, talk about your experiences, good or bad. The more that we can all go out and share kind of what things have been like, it all helps us, know where to go, what good opportunities are to take, and which ones we should avoid. So as much as we can foster like safe spaces to talk about experiences, we should really prioritize doing that. And don't be afraid to. Crucially, be the person you want to work with, be the person you want to work for. It's the thing I've tried to champion the most in my career so far. And I think from the very beginning of your fieldwork experience, the more that you can embody that, the more you'll get out of your experiences, and the better relationships you'll gain as well. So on that, thank you very much. I'll finish with kind of this closing statement that I think is really important. Fieldwork is so exciting. It's such a wonderful part of marine science. It's really rewarding. And between us, it's really our collective responsibility to make it a community that's safe and inclusive and fun. So thank you for listening. Hopefully you've taken something away from this that means that you can help contribute to that. I'm really, happy to talk to you today, and I'm really glad that for Women in Ocean Science for giving me this space. So thank you very much. That's my Instagram account. That's also my email address. So if any questions I either can't answer today or you want to ask me afterwards, if you don't think of it now, please feel free to contact me. I'll do my best to answer. Otherwise, I will come back to you and see if you have any questions to close up the session. Cool. All right, so I'm just gonna have to scroll through this. Nice. People sharing some nice things.
It's from Louise. Yeah.
Louise. Yes, there we go. I've reached out in the past to organizations for fieldwork support, but sometimes feel like they have to teach me more for me to be helpful, especially treating data on R. Coming from politics background, do you have any advice to know specific fieldwork opportunities to implement data analysis or R courses? I assume that means trying to get experience using data analysis and R, like from the fieldwork experience itself. Sorry, have I understood that correctly? Just want to make sure if you're still there, Louise. If so, I can talk on that for a little bit. It's really, really, really laborious, but you can teach yourself R on many platforms. So it's good just to get a bit of background on that. It's also really, really fine for people to teach you things. I learn, like I said, that it's a learning experience. So it's, you're bringing yourself and your enthusiasm and your willingness to learn, but what you give back from being someone in the field who gives them help is that learning. So you shouldn't also feel like you're a burden by doing that. It's good to, if that's something specifically you want to learn, then I'd say if you can find places where there is active research going on and you go into the field and say, I specifically want to learn R. So I'm reflecting on it now. This has just like come to me, but when there was a field station I used to work at that, we used to run like little R sessions for the people who wanted to learn it. So they had like no reason to do that. You didn't have to come and learn R. It wasn't something that we did. But we had a couple of groups of volunteers who came in and said, this is something I really want to learn. And so me and a couple of the other scientists then like put a little workshop together. And so we would run that. So if it's something you want to learn, even if a fieldwork opportunity doesn't, necessarily do it on its own terms, just ask. Normally people will be happy to learn. And if it's something that you feel like you want to get outside of that, then definitely have a look and see if you can learn online.
I can add to that what you just said, because Louise, I struggled a lot with R during my undergrad, and I got someone to help me out, and people are nice in our area. So yeah, I agree with you, Clemency.
It's also a good kind of like, R is not particularly what's the word? It doesn't come easily to a lot of people. So yeah,
Mhm.
it's a steep learning curve, and so I think it's fine. It's definitely like never ever feel like you're the black sheep in not knowing art because
Mhm.
everyone struggles with it.
Yeah.
And the greater diversity of opportunity you get to like try it out, you kind of have to force yourself to do it a little bit sometimes. So yeah, don't worry too much. But yeah, R is a great resource for it. Excellent. Okay, I don't think there are any more. I can't see any other questions in the chat. So if anyone has anything, then send a message. Otherwise, I guess we can close this webinar up. I really quickly just want, before I forget, I'm so sorry, I've forgotten your name, but the person who messaged about Bristol, Sifa. Yeah, hopefully you've got my email address, but just send me an email. And then I can come back to you on the stuff specifically about Bristol. Oh, it's so dark in here now. I've just noticed how spooky I look.
No, I don't.
um, Cool. So I'm just going to read your message really quickly, Fanny. Yeah, CVs are quite challenging. One thing I will say is there are actually really good templates on Word now. Um, It's really personal choice, I guess, on how you want it to look. I tend to just go for kind of something that's a bit more. What I say again is the thing that's most important is what's the content. I tend to go for something that's quite simple. Just again, not too wordy, but just quite like concise and to the point. I keep it black and white just because it like is easy. I want someone to be able to read that and just pull out the key information. But I definitely would recommend looking at some templates and seeing if you can use them. Just kind of fill those in. Normally you don't want it to be more than 2 pages. I'd say if you're if yeah, I mean even my post PhD CV is less than 3 pages. So yeah, I try and keep it short, keep it simple, keep it concise, make it really easy for someone to just like read the first couple of pages and be like bam bam bam, perfect. And in terms of being in a transition stage and pursuing a PhD, again, I'd really go back to kind of your expectations in the beginning. What do you want to get? I think a PhD is a really, really big commitment. And it's not an easy thing to do at all. I definitely would not see it as a qualification the same way that you see like a master's degree sometimes as like more because it's just that bit shorter as something that you can get as a qualification. But a PhD is your life for probably 5 years or so. And it is like a real challenge. So if you want to get into research, if you know you want to like lead research, lead like a lab group and have like a real academic career, it is important. But yeah, definitely recommend talking to different people who have done different pathways, I'd say, and explore those options. Yeah, a PhD is really only if you specifically want to get into research. Cool.
Alana, we will post the webinar. It's being recorded, so we will post it in our website, so you'll be able to rewatch it next week, hopefully.
So I'll ask these ones really quickly. I'm aware of the time. I don't want to keep you
Yeah.
for ages, Laura.
No,
So I'll just
that's fine.
answer these ones really quickly.
No worries.
But yes, in terms of having experience and then in trying to find paid opportunities, yeah, that bridge is a real challenge. I'd find that you kind of have to, again, it's kind of, I guess, like knowing your worth a little bit. It's the opportunities definitely don't come up as much. So you have to be a little bit more selective. The best way to do it is through job boards for sure. I think most of the paid opportunities you find for things like that, especially like entry level skilled paid jobs, job boards are always the best place to find things. Or again, asking professors. Sometimes they will have little pots of money at universities to help out in research. So that's the ones I've done. And often with universities, you do get more of an opportunity for professional growth as well. Shifting from paying for field work to building a career and earning a living, yes, it's very, very hard. I mean, in my experience, it was definitely something I balanced up until I did my master's. And this is very personal. I mean, it's different for everyone. I took 2 years out of my like undergraduate, between my undergraduate and my master's degree, both sides to work to earn money so that I could do things like this. And I found that after my master's degree, I no longer needed to pay to do it. So it kind of does come for me at least with having a bit of experience in the bank that then allows you to be competitive for paid experiences, which is kind of, I guess, the same way that I just replied to the comment before. It is challenging. If you want to make a lot of money, marine science probably isn't the right place for you. But again, definitely know that being able to like live day to day is critically important. Again, we all need to kind of be on the front foot of making sure that we hold people accountable to understanding that that's an important thing for all of us. So yeah, all I would say is, yeah, the right people and the right organizations and the right researchers will understand that. My supervisor's always been really supportive of students incoming, for example, to make sure they always have enough money to support themselves. So the right researchers will make sure that you get that. So if you're talking to someone and they're expecting you to go really out of pocket or to really struggle to do field work, they're not the person you want to work with, and we probably shouldn't be supporting them. Cool. I think that's most of them. Agat, is there a question? Do you want to unmute yourself if you have a question?
Yeah, sorry. So first of all, it's nice to see you. And I actually studied with Laura in
Hi,
university, so it's
Oh,
super
hello.
funny. It's super funny.
I saw your name in the
Hello. And thank you so much, Clemency. I just wanted to say thank you and
Yeah.
ask more about the platform you built about safer field work for shark research, because I'm currently working in shark research and we're doing field work. I'm still learning, and it is like kind of scary when you get that big shark. So I just wanted to ask where I can find that platform and information.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Yeah, we're still developing at the moment. I'll send a link to the project so you can just like read a bit more about it. At the moment, so I'm trying to do this at the same time. I'm really bad at doing two things at once. Yeah, so that's kind of like a bit of background on the project itself, kind of what we're doing with it. We're kind of in the stage at the moment where we're developing the resources that we want to put out. So there is no like platform at the moment, but we plan to eventually create kind of like a standardized code of conduct and kind of like two-way statements of expectations as well, that hopefully will be able to be useful in the field. So those are the kind of things that, yeah, if you're going out and doing field work, you could like incorporate into your own
Cool.
research or like within your lab group. So yeah, we hope to, by the end of the year, we're taking this to Sharks International in May. And so hopefully after that, by the end of the year, we should have something that we're able to publish. So yeah, I'll keep you posted. But it was nice to see
All
you.
right. Yeah.
Glad you're
Looking
doing,
forward to reading it.
cool stuff. Yeah, thank you.
Lovely to see you, Agat.
Yeah.
So cool. So nice. Well, thank you very much to everyone that has joined today's webinar. I'm very happy that you all made it, and it means a lot to Women in Ocean Science because it's really nice to see the community together. And yeah, thank you, Clemency, so much for everything. I think it's been really valuable, and you've set a lot of examples, which is really helpful from my perspective as well. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Laura, as well. Thank you for your time. And yeah.
And if anyone wants to contact us, you can always do so. So feel free. Okay.
Cool.
Okay. Thank you very much.